Welcome to the Red Rose Film Club, a movie podcast that examines the wide world of cinema through our perpetually lefty pinko commie soy boy cuck Antifa super soldier filter. But more specifically, we love movies and want to create a podcast that would appeal to the disparate taste of our liberal, leftist, socialist, communist, Marxist, and Leninist friends. Red Rose Film Club is for leftists of all stripes who don't know what to talk about at parties other than movies and politics. My name is Craig. I work in public education and am passionate about social justice and workers' rights. And I'm with...
Hey, I'm Hal. In 2024, I'm switching it up and taking it back to the basics. I'm a socialist trying to grapple with our world by reflecting on it through art, theory, and the will of the people. Also, in news that anyone who's been trucking with us for some time might very much appreciate, we have, for the first time in almost 2 years, the intervention of a producer in the room with us, y'all. Woo. Chantel, close friend, pianist extraordinaire, live scorer of films, smarty pants supreme, the best date to an exquisite meal, and maybe most relevant here, a very experienced audio editor. So,
yay.
Great. We're so happy. Thank you, Chantal. So, Craig.
Yes.
What other pop culture are you getting into these days?
Oh my gosh, I've been watching so many movies lately. Some of them were stinkers or at least disappointing. I didn't like Beetlejuice very much. Have you seen it yet?
I have not.
Yeah, it just had no zhuzh, no verve. It just felt a little soulless, lifeless. I don't know. But I did see...
He is dead. So I said he is dead.
He is dead. I thought you meant one of the actors in it. And I was like, who?
Oh yeah, Michael Keaton's dead. They resurrected him. They Weekend at Bernie's him.
Okay, do you know what's weird about Beetlejuice though? Excuse me.
Character,
Beetlejuice,
the movie. Okay, the second film.
If you remember, the first one features a very prominent, though not known then, Hollywood pedophile in Jeffrey, whatever his name is.
Yes. Is it
the father?
Dad? Yeah.
Who is in this movie, but they find ways to repeatedly have him not have a head or not show the face. So the actor is not in the movie, but the character is. And it's so distracting to the point because there's different reasons for why he pops up in it or not. But there's a one where he got because he's supposed to be a dead guy. He's just moving around. Where one he got bit by a shark, so he just doesn't have a head. But the actor's face, there's a mural. There's a few times where they're oh, remember Dad? And there's a mural, and he isn't there. It just seemed like such an odd choice to be we're gonna write this pedophile out, but still make the character fairly prominent in the movie.
Of the various ways to cope with
that,
people being Me Too'd or some other, cultural held to task.
Yeah.
You've got the scale of recast, Kevin Spacey in Was That All the Money, in the World?
Yeah.
Recast at the very last minute.
Right. But this was just
versus have the person fully be in there, but attempt to reinscribe their legacy by making a joke out of it. Interessant.
Yeah, it was odd. But I want to talk about some of the ones that I did like. And the first one is I saw the directorial debut from Zoe Kravitz, Blink Twice. Have you seen that yet?
I have not, but I was looking forward to it. It's do
cool.
Quite like her.
Yeah, it's a little messy here and there, just loose story threads and things like that. But overall I like it a lot. It's is it stylish?
The trailer made it look stylish, and that can do a lot for me.
Yeah, it is definitely. Okay. Yeah, and there's interesting characters. Channing Tatum is great in it.
Do you love Channing Tatum?
Christian Slater is awesome. Christian Slater gives one of the funniest line readings of all time.
You're listing the white boys that I like. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Christian Slater, Channing Tatum. That's it.
Was Jake Gyllenhaal in the movie?
Nope.
Because that's
there were some more interesting people though. Oh, Haley Joel Osment is in it.
I feel some affinity or connection with him because my name, my birth name is Haley Joe.
Oh.
And so as a child, when I first saw Sixth Sense or AI, I was if I married him, then we'd be Haley Joe and Haley Joel.
I mean, a real missed opportunity.
Right.
But, but yeah, I think this is a really, it's obviously not a subtle allegory of power and the Me Too movement and how power is used and things like that. But it's also got a lot to say about how rich people can kind of get away with anything and everything.
Continue to be in movies with their head chopped off.
With their head chopped off, yes. And do you know the original title of this Blink Twice?
I do not. In fact, I had approximately no idea what it was about. I just watched the trailer and was like, oh, Zoe Kravitz. This looks pretty.
So just I won't spoil anything because it takes a lot of fun twists and turns. But basically, it's like Channing Tatum plays like a Elon Musk type guy who has a chance encounter with, I don't remember the lead actress's name, but she's fucking great in it. She's just like a waitress at an event or something. And they kind of have like a little meet cute. And he's like, hey, me and my boys are headed to my private island. You want to tag along for a weekend? And she's like, oh, sure.
There's bells and they're being wrong.
Yeah. But what the fuck was I saying? I completely lost what I was going to say about it. I don't remember. The original title.
The producer's producing.
And I see why it didn't get released under this, but apparently it was originally called Pussy Island.
Okay.
And they retitled it Blink Twice.
Listen, I love everybody being bold this year. Like, honestly, driveway dies, Pussy Island. Like,
it is, and bold is a great word for it.
Cock City. I don't know.
I will also say a thing that I really like too is it has a one of its themes, I think, is the way that people, like manipulative people, will kind of weaponize like therapy speak and like that kind of shit. And there's some really interesting stuff there too. Another one that I saw is an Irish horror movie called Oddity.
I have not even heard of this.
Holy
I don't
shit,
think.
it is cool. It's cool. It's weird. It's kind of funny in parts, but it's this like this woman whose sister is murdered, and she is like this psychic, has some sort of like psychic abilities, and she's murdered in like this like palatial like manor that her and her husband were going to try to renovate. So the sister is like just shows up and is like, I'd like to stay for a few nights to get in touch with my sister or whatever. And then it's like her uncovering exactly what happened. But one centerpiece in this is that they have a family heirloom that is a life-sized wooden man with like an awful face that is like the scariest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. And it's just sitting and like,
no,
throughout.
Absolutely not.
It's really cool.
The thing about me, I don't like taxidermy. I don't like mannequins. I don't like animatronics. No. Yeah,
this thing looks fucking scary. But Oddity is really cool. I liked it a lot.
Do you know who the distributor is?
It's A24, I think.
Okay.
Maybe look up.
Interesting. That does sound spooky.
Okay, maybe not. Oh, Shudder. No. Distributed by Wildcard Distribution, production companies Keeper Pictures, Nowhere, and Shudder.
Okay. Yeah. Did you watch it on Shudder?
I did not watch it on Shudder because I don't have Shudder, but it was available for like $3.99 on Amazon to rent.
I see it.
And then the last one that I saw that I really liked, which is one that I already texted you and say, maybe we should do this for the podcast, but it is.
And then I texted you back and said I was going to talk to you about doing it for the podcast, so I have not yet viewed it.
It's really cool. It is Jeremy Saulnier's Rebel Ridge, which is like, first off, it's got a trope that I love, which is just like a guy who's mysteriously good at just kicking ass, which is always fun. But it's basically like this dude he's going through this small town in Maine to post $10,000 bail for his cousin that got caught up on like a minor marijuana possession charge. And on the way, he gets pulled over by cops who like, and he is a black dude and the cops are white guys who like immediately are suspect of him. And, you know, let me search your car. Let me do this. And he doesn't break any laws, but they find that he has 10 grand in his backpack. And
do a little civil forfeiture.
And so they basically take his money, and his cousin, for whatever reason that the movie will uncover, like is going to be transferred to this other prison. And that is bad news for his cousin because he has maybe made enemies or whatever. So he's desperately trying to get him out of this county jail. And the like cops taking his 10 grand basically triggers this avalanche of events of him like desperately trying to get his cousin out before they transfer him. And it's this guy, this mysterious ass kicker going up against Don Johnson as the like small town sheriff.
And even Don Johnson. This sounds like a light-sided S. Craig Zahler film.
Honestly, the whole time I was thinking about it was Brawl in Cell Block 99. If that wasn't the dumbest fucking not Brawl. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Mixed Brawl and Dragged Across Concrete. Like if those weren't made by like the dumbest fucking guy ever. But it's really cool. And it dives in a lot, like not just civil asset forfeiture, but how like these sheriffs in small counties just have like little fiefdoms that are almost entirely at their control. And it's cool as hell. And I like Jeremy Saulnier. Like this was a return to form because I don't think I loved his last one, the one in the snow. Do you remember that one?
I do not.
Yeah.
I don't watch a ton of movies that drop exclusively on streaming. And I think...
Oh, that's right, because this was a Netflix orig. Yeah.
Yeah. Not that I never do. It's just I wouldn't say I'm frequently pursuing them, collecting them all. But I would be interested in exploring this, especially because it sounds like it's, even if not intentionally or explicitly so, in conversation with other movies that we've covered.
Yeah. And what about you? What you been watching?
Well, first, I absolutely have to bring up The Substance. A movie that I have seen in theaters not once, but twice.
2 times.
Since it came out. Wide release. I won't say like a ton about this because I think it has been pretty extensively covered and Lord knows I've yelled about it on Twitter enough. But I liked it even more the second time.
Yeah, cool.
I found it to be much more fun the second time, whereas the first time I think the allegory of aging and kind of the ways in which your younger and older self can be at war with each other when you haven't grappled with your self-esteem and confronted your own mortality in a way that leads to reconciliation. Those themes felt very, very present to me. And because I didn't know what was coming, I felt hyper focused, and I still had a great time the first time.
Yeah.
But the second time, I was just like, I am on this ride.
Hell yeah.
And it's a fun, nasty, disgusting ride.
Hell yeah.
It also then prompted me to look up, because if you have AMC A-List, you can see every movie that you've seen for the entirety that you've had it.
Oh.
And so I decided to look up what is every movie that I saw twice in theaters since starting A-List in June 2018, which is as early as you can start. That we signed up literally the day that you could, right? So going in reverse order.
Okay.
Barbie. That I will say is a function of circumstance. I was Boppenheimering with friends, and there was one friend who couldn't Boppenheimer but really wanted to see Barbie, so I went separate. I would not have otherwise seen that movie twice in theaters. I don't hate it, but I don't love it.
Yeah.
Uncut Gems, absolutely. I would see that movie in theaters again. Suspiria 2018, absolutely. I saw that within 24 hours.
I was to say, did you only see that one twice?
Yes, but I saw it, and then the next day I went and saw it. A Star is Born, love it. White Boy Rick.
Now that one needs some explaining. That's the Detroit drug dealer movie.
Yep.
Right? Yeah.
When I saw it, I laughed and I was like, "What the fuck?" And then I think what happened is Mike and I saw it, and then this is one of those saw it with my family over a holiday, and it was just the movie that everybody could agree on. But did make me giggle. And then Black Klansman, which I also saw 2 times in a really short period of time. I saw it, and then within a few days was there's some stuff I want to, my feelings about this, I want to sort out. So I went and saw it again immediately. But yeah, so Substance joining in the illustrious gang.
Can I tell you mine that I can remember?
Yes. And White Boy Rick.
Hell yeah. One was The Dark Knight, because that was I never see movies twice in theaters.
You saw that with A-List?
No. Just movies I've seen twice in the theaters.
Well, if we do that list is so much longer.
Mine's 2 that I can think of. Because I just don't see I just am well, I don't want to spend the money, or if I'm going to spend the money, I'd rather see something that I haven't seen yet. So I just hardly ever do it. But Dark Knight was a family thing.
Yeah.
And then the other one was Wedding Crashers, which I saw. I don't think 2 was the only time.
Lord.
And it was more I was when did that come out? I was 17 or 18. So I was right
you might
the age
have
for
even been slightly younger than that.
But it was within the first few years of getting my driver's license and like having summers not be at like a summer camp or at home, like with friends. And I just had a bunch of different friends that kept being like, we should go see Wedding Crashers. And I was like, all right, fuck it. I don't care.
The movie that I've seen the most number of times in theaters, and I could not tell you the exact number. I'm going to say 5 or 6, approximately in that, is the summer between 6th and 7th grade for me.
Mm-hmm.
My family moved from outside of Tampa to Cape Coral. And if you move your children in the summertime between classes, right, between school, it's hard to make friends. And like also soccer doesn't start till fall, right? So because of circumstances I've described before on this podcast, my family and I could go to AMC theaters as frequently as we wanted. What my mom would do would just be drop me off with my sister and be like, watch a movie. So my sister and I that summer.
Oh, can I try to guess?
Oh, yes.
What year are we talking?
Ooh, oh God. 03, maybe?
Okay.
That it might be 04.
All right. I had a gut. I had a gut sideways. I was just trying to think what would it be.
My sister is 4 years younger than me.
Oh, okay. I was going to say older because I was just trying to think what would be a funny movie for like a 6th or 7th grader to see like a couple times in theaters.
So 2003 is the answer, is the year. It is Legally Blonde 2, Red, White, and Blonde.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we just went there and like ran that shit back over and over again. That is like during original theatrical run. I think if you included like seen things like at Cap City or other things, it would probably be a different movie. But like that was pure that summer, like 3 times a week or whatever for 2 weeks.
Yep.
We went.
Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays. Catch us at Legally Blonde 2.
Red, White, and Blonde.
Excuse me.
Then I want to bring up a mode of pop culture we don't often talk about.
Ooh.
So this last week, I went to Atlanta with Mike and some friends, specifically to go to the Bucs Falcons game, which was
a barn burner, right?
Nuts.
Yeah.
Like possibly the best football game of like the last 10 years. Yeah. It was crazy. It was very exciting. But the next day, so we have our football night on Thursday night, and then the next day we get up and go to the High Museum, which is the Atlanta's Fine Art Museum. I love it. I've been there many times at this point. But I wanted to talk about a few pieces of art that I saw there that I had not seen before or hadn't seen in person. And particularly ones that in some way pertain to themes that we cover on the pod. So the first is that the High currently has on display, I think since this a couple of months ago, or maybe last year, 3 like giant full wall size paintings. Like they look like murals, but they're on canvas, done in oil by a Lebanese artist, a Lebanese American artist named Nabil Kosno. And the series as a whole, there's like 80 plus of these murals. Only 3 were on display. But the series is called The Split of Life. And it is about all pertaining to scenes of violence, war, destruction, and catastrophe. And the one in particular I want to talk about is called The Split, North-South Split. It was made from 1989 to 1992. We can share some links so folks can look at it with us. But when you walk in, it's a giant room, and on the left there's another giant mural of his that relates to the Trail of Tears and the stealing of Native American land. And on the right of it, there is a mural related to like Jim Crow and lynching. And the mural in the center is about, as the title would suggest, the Civil War. And it is genuinely frightening. Like it is the scale of it, the intensity of these paintings. To walk into the room evoked actual fear in me. And I think we talked about this a little last time in the solo episode, but art that provokes you into actually having like a physiological experience of emotion is very powerful. And I also find in our era of intense saturation, really rare. Yeah, and it was really moving. And there's lots of his other murals in this series that you can look up online. So I really recommend that. The other thing that's really dope about this mural is it's done in an expressive style, meaning it's not necessarily hyper detailed, right? It's done in really broad strokes, while still maintaining a level of legibility that for its scale, like how big it is, being both expressive, legible, and huge is really impressive. Then the other thing I want to bring up is currently the High has an exhibit as part of, this is traveled. It wasn't curated specifically for the High. It's been at the Brooklyn Museum and a bunch of other places too, but there's an exhibit called Giant that's from the private collection of Swizz Beatz and Alicia Keys, who are really extensive collectors of fine art and specifically emerging, upcoming, and established Black artists, and other like minoritized groups of artists, kind of investing in them and making sure that their art is saved. And there's two pieces that I want to highlight. There's an artist named Titus Kaphar, who is pretty well established in the art world, where he did a triptych of paintings called A Puzzled Revolution. It was painted in 2021, where it takes the classic image of, oh my goodness, Muhammad Ali, and knocking out, I forget,
Joe Frazier.
No, it's not Joe Frazier. It's Sonny something where he like
Sonny
won
Liston?
like one. Yeah, that sounds right. Okay,
the like iconic poster of him standing over with his fist.
Yes,
like that,
exactly.
Sonny Liston on the ground. Yeah.
My script has decided to not function anymore.
Hey, I was a 19-year-old boy in college in the 2000s. I had that poster. Did we not all?
I did not.
I had that, and I had the Frank Sinatra mugshot because I watched The Sopranos when I was young and thought it was cool.
Do you remember what the Mac, like, it's not Control, I believe, but Foursquare? Option Command Escape.
There you go. I was about to tell you. Man. What quit on you?
It just like is like frozen.
Oh, okay.
All right. Wrong for another day. Good thing I have Drive on my phone. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, my phone is mostly charged. All right. So the first piece I want to talk about from the Giant exhibit that I saw is by an artist named Titus Kaphar, who is pretty well established in the art world at this point. It was a piece called A Puzzled Revolution. He made it in 2023. It's a triptych of 3 different canvases that are all based around that very classic poster of Muhammad Ali, where he's kind of standing over the dude. What's his name?
Sonny Liston.
Yeah. That he just destroyed. And these canvases, again, are quite large. Giant, the massive scale is a reoccurring theme throughout the exhibit, which I really appreciate as someone that quite likes installation work and work that makes its gravity felt through size. But the 3 paintings are basically structured around the silhouette of Muhammad Ali and then insert other paintings or other work inside of that. So one of them has a very classic, like Italian master's portrait of the Madonna and Child inside of the silhouette. Another has a painting that I don't remember the artist of. I want to say it's from the 1800s of like pirates trying to save their ship from attackers, where that is cast in the center. And then one relating to the American Revolution. Again, a classic painting pertaining to the American Revolution inside that silhouette. And so its use of negative space and of contrasting these different moments or expressions of power against each other, really like impressive and moving to see in person. And then the last that I want to point out is a painting by Nina Chanel Abney. who I absolutely love. I've never seen any of her work in person, so it was like really thrilling to see it. And this painting is called Catfish. She made it in 2017, and it is a series of panels of like women selling their stuff. And I really like the way she mixes the profane with these very like graphic, blocky approaches that feel almost like Matisse's, block paintings, except block print paintings, except it's like spray paint and somebody's coochie. And again, they're really big. They're quite large.
Yeah, this one I can't tell the like scale of from the pictures you got, but it looks
is big.
Yeah,
it's big. Like
the other one, the picture you have, you can see like the floor and the ceiling and see how massive,
I would say like probably like at least 6, 7, 8 feet tall. Okay. And maybe like 4 feet wide, like 3 to 4 feet wide, each of those panels. So then it's like a wall, basically. But yeah, so I love the opportunity to take in some art, even more so with friends. So we'll definitely include some pictures or links so folks can look at that. But, we've got some themes of, again, war and strife and the dysfunction of society. Got some themes related to the ways in which art history reflects or doesn't reflect Black Americans. And some reinscription or reclamation of that. And then also some, I think in a lot of Nina Chanel Abney's work, like making the base, the profane, the sexual, and projecting it into an environment where it would not normally be, but also having some like playfulness at the same time. And again, drawing on that art history, like evoking, there's almost in some of these like a cubist playfulness with time and space in the way she constructs people's figures.
Awesome. How big is this museum? How long did it take?
It has 4 floors. And I'll just say this, we literally couldn't find, like we walked through all of it and I was like, wait, Giant like is supposed to be here. That's where we saw, we were planning on going there anyway. And then we had seen advertisements for that exhibit throughout the city while we were there the previous day. And I was like, we totally missed it because it's in like a different building and we'd gone through all the floors. So then we doubled back. The high is always worth it, in my opinion, if you're in Atlanta.
I've never been, but I want to go because Jess and I go to Atlanta somewhat frequently, and that seems like a cool spot.
It's worth it. It's in Midtown, so I think that is sometimes the thing is it's like not really in a place you would go if you're not like explicitly seeking out either this or the Symphony. I will say the Symphony was having a Gucci Mane specific night.
Oh, hell yeah.
I saw being advertised and I was like, that is too close to now to drive up here. But oh my God. Like Gucci Mane will be there. Obviously it's Atlanta, right? Yeah.
Wait, like playing with a symphony?
Yes.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yes.
Damn,
cool shit's happening in Atlanta.
Yeah.
They're on another wave. Also, related to that, I'm just going to say, side note, music. The Falcons game, we last fall went to the Falcons Bucks game in Tampa. But this is the first time I'd gone to a game at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. Best, not shocking at all, but best music in any sports arena I've ever been in. Killed it. Young Jock was there.
Young Jock was at the game?
and performed.
Yeah. Wait, what?
Yeah.
Like on the field?
No, like they have a stage like up on one of the the second or third level. And it was just like, how, this is not the equivalent, but like the 7th inning stretch, right? Like something like that, where it's like, between the 3rd and 4th quarters.
Young Jock's going to sing Take Me Out to the Ball Game.
And then the whole crowd. It was sick. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Cool. Well, speaking of sick.
In a different way. Yeah.
Let's dive into our current events. What's going on in the world that's either got you celebrating or sounds like living in despair?
Yeah, living in despair. So for this part, I thought about talking about perpetual climate crisis, about deregulation, institutional dysfunction and distrust. However, 230 people died in Hurricane Helene last week. How incarcerated people were left in their own feces for almost a week in North Carolina. all while digitally yassified JD Vance is on TV denying climate science. I was thinking about talking about how I read the Lever article about how the climate bubble in the housing market, or rather about the climate bubble in the housing market, basically how risk management systems are not keeping up with the rhythm of repeated natural disaster threats, and that as home insurance premiums go up, home values are threatened, pairing economic turmoil with physical precarity. I'm thinking about a California slashed by wildfires where Allstate and State Farm stopped writing home insurance coverage altogether in the last 18 months. Oh. A damp Louisiana where 20 companies, 20 home insurance companies have fled in the last 2 years. I'm thinking about a shitwhip Florida where rates rose between 30 to 50% depending on the company last year in 2023, and where almost 2 million people are on last resort policies with very thin coverage, such as the state-backed Citizens Property Insurance Company. I thought about talking about how I'm feeling like we're past the breaking point, but I don't want to succumb to doomerism, and it feels a little too raw and vulnerable right now as our state and literally my family faces down destruction in the next 48 hours because of Milton, that bum ass. I also thought about talking about how DeSantis is scrambling to defeat one of the southeastern U.S.'s last hopes at codifying abortion access, about how DeSantis has used the Agency for Healthcare Administration, AHCA, rolling out a massive public relations campaign, including television ads, to perpetuate misinformation about Florida's current 6-week abortion ban and the silencing, restricting effects that it has on clinicians making determinations about patient health and well-being. How he's engaged in state-funded electioneering and is trying to undercut the democratic process of citizens' referendums. How Florida legislators sneakily wrote in a $1 million budget line item during session months ago at the request of DeSantis to fund these lies using taxpaying dollars that say Amendment 4, quote unquote, threatens women's safety. But then I thought much of our audience might already know all of that. Please vote for Amendment 4 in November if you live in Florida. Volunteer time and funds through Floridians Protecting Freedom if you can. So I hunted for something not to despair over, or a social movement victory to grasp onto. I looked at The Intercept, Democracy Now!, Counterpunch, The Lever, various Instagram accounts and Twitter accounts, podcast. I squeezed the orange, but no juice came. But I did not feel alone. So today, I am fucking clinging with all of my might onto the fact that I'm not alone. We're not alone. And that means that collective action is possible.
That's nice.
So that's what I have to offer.
That was very nice. That makes me, because I've been feeling a lot of the same shit, like with the hurricanes and all that, and that it's comforting. Not too much comforting any of us can do in all this, but right. It's enough. And Godspeed to you and yours and everybody in Tampa, because we're a day out from Hurricane Milton hitting, and it looks scary as shit. So yeah. Looks horrifying, and it feels a little like, is this the rest of forever? Like, is this what every year for the rest of forever looks like in Florida? And I'm afraid of the answer is yes, but anyways. But
we're doing it together.
There, we're here. We're here.
How about you talk about another great thing that's happening?
Yeah, and I'll keep it brief because there's not a whole lot to add, but we are recording this on October 8th, just past the 1-year anniversary of the war in Gaza and the continued genocide against Palestinians. And, there's not a whole lot to say that hasn't been said, but I do want to just point out 2 things that happened recently that I think spoke to me on what's going on in Gaza. And the first is Ta-Nehisi Coates, author, appeared on a CBS morning show, and this fucking ding dong on there asked him a question. Did you see this?
I did.
Yeah. This fucking ding dong asked him like the most loaded question ever, where he was basically like, is this book for terrorists? Is kind of the boiled down of what he said. And Ta-Nehisi Coates gave a very leveled response, into which his ultimate culmination was saying was telling this guy apartheid is either right or apartheid is wrong. There is no in between. And I think that's a great way to kind of rebut any Zionist ding dongs in your life that might come at you with some bullshit.
Can I just say on him, It is really, honestly, this is a thing to celebrate, like to watch a public intellectual who has staked their claim and done a lot of work against many obstacles and barriers and established a reputation for himself, and for him to cash in that capital to this end is like truly, like, I have chills right now, really powerful.
Yeah.
And it's not, it takes a very courageous person to jump off that cliff, and to do so with conviction.
Yeah.
And it is really encouraging. And I think, it reminds me of like the work of W.B. Du Bois, right? And his standing up against colonialism in Africa, like European colonialism in Africa. And I think that we're lucky to exist at the same time as him. And I hope that more public intellectuals join him, because again, you're safest through collective action.
Yeah. And everything that he writes is like a must read. I haven't read this new one yet that just came out.
Yeah, it came out.
It's like a week ago, but it's called The Message if anybody wants to check it out. And then the other thing that that happened in this past week related to Gaza is I'm a big fan of the post-rock band Godspeed You Black Emperor. Are you a fan? No.
There was a period of time when I've actually seen them perform live, but I have not listened to them
I'm so jealous.
Like 15 years. Like I used to listen to them in high school.
Well, they released an album last week called No Title as of 13th February 2024, 28,340 dead.
Wow.
Which is basically, I mean, if you're unfamiliar with Godspeed You Black Emperor, they are like a post-rock instrumental group that make like, there's no vocals, but they make like large sweeping operatic like rock music. Honestly, I don't feel like there's anybody else that does exactly what they do. It's just like, there's a lot of instrumental post-rock bands, but they're Godspeed You Black Emperor just has this like, it sounds so cliche and corny, but like there's like every album, there's like a story. You can almost like visualize the way that the songs are put together. And this one is very clearly about the war in Gaza. There's like these really like a lot of like discordant chords and big like booming drums that are clearly meant to represent like bombs dropping and the kind of like shell shock aftermath of it. And it is like a monumental work about what's going on in Gaza. So yeah, I wanted to just shout that out.
And now you want to now
we've bummed everybody
out.
For
something completely different.
Yeah, since we've bummed everybody out, I want to talk about something else that's going on that's completely different, and that is baseball talk, because I have to do it every once in a while. But have you been following?
This is worthy.
This is worthy. Have you been following the season that Shohei Ohtani is having?
No, but I saw clips of like the ultimate moment, and then have been following the like news story regarding baseball, the actual physical baseball.
Yeah.
Of the final
the guy
moment.
That caught it. Yeah. So for those who might not know, Shohei Ohtani is a Japanese baseball player who is an absolute fucking freak and is doing things that like no one's ever done. First off, like baseball just doesn't have pitchers that also hit. And if they do, they don't have pitchers that pitch well and also hitters that hit well. And Shohei does both, like the best at both. And also, this is supposed to be his off year. He had like a Tommy John or elbow replacement. So he did not pitch it, not replacement, but some sort of surgery on his throwing arm, and has not pitched at all this year. And it was kind of like, all right, Shohei, this is a recovery year. And in his recovery year, he broke a shit ton of records and became the first ever 50-50 baseball player, which is 50 home runs and 50 stolen bases in a season. And the dude's just a fucking freak. Like, he is a freak.
See, that's one of the things that I do love about sport, and why I always say like I'm a real sport fan, because what I'm interested in is like everyone doing well. Like games where someone is getting blown out are shitty and boring. I'm not excited by. That's thrilling to see, like cool. Pressing the boundaries of what a human can do.
He's in the playoffs right now. Another thing that's fun in baseball right now is, for the first time ever, there are currently 4 playoff series happening. And for the first time in baseball history, all 4 series are tied at 1-1. I know. It's kind of fun.
They're cooking.
They are. But it's baseball, so there's like 19,000 more games. So
yep. And unfortunately, everything between the stolen bases and home runs suck.
no, I don't have to stand up for it. I love a pitcher's duel. I love watching.
Yeah, you're right. The pitchers are also doing cool shit. Everybody else. I'm just razzing.
No, I know.
I've been to mini games. Trust me, it is not a lack of exposure.
But yeah, do we want to move into the movie talk about the movie we came to discuss today?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
Hell yeah. So in our last few episodes about fascism and Italian filmmakers, we discussed some truly horrific themes and metaphors about fascism. For this episode, the themes are a bit more on the nose. We watched 1989 Society, a movie where a man's face emerges out of his own butthole. And I think this is a great opportunity to discuss how Reaganomics exacerbated America's inequality, allowing the rich to feed off the misfortune of the lower classes. So this is definitely something we've touched on before, but let's talk about Reaganomics again. In the 1970s, America's economy was in crisis mode. The 1973 OPEC oil embargo sent the country into a period of stagflation, and the U.S. dollar was in free fall after the collapse of the Bretton Woods system. In addition, the U.S. was wrapping up a disastrous war in Vietnam and was hemorrhaging cash to fund various other colonial enterprises. The U.S. was as a country was in dire straits, and many felt disassociated, waiting for someone to tell them that our rapidly declining American empire could once again be that great shining city on a hill. Enter one of the 20th century's greatest villains and his trusty sidekick, Ronald Reagan and Milton Friedman, the Lennon-McCartney of economic theories. Reagan won the presidency in 1980, promising a revival of the American economy, a return of lost jobs, and fiscal policies that would not just lift Americans out of poverty, but give every American an equal opportunity for success. Reaganomics is the colloquial term given to President Reagan's economic policies, calling for drastic reduction of government spending, a decrease in taxes, and the heralding of free market capitalism as the answer to America's woes.
And the Reagan Foundation itself says of Reagan's economic plan, this administration's objective will be a healthy, vigorous, growing economy that provides equal opportunities for all Americans, with no barriers born of bigotry or discrimination. Putting America back to work means putting all Americans back to work. Ending inflation means freeing all Americans from the terror of runaway living costs. All must share in the productive work of this new beginning, and all must share in the bounty of a revived economy.
And Reagan promised that his plan would trickle down to lower classes, and before long, all of America would be grabbing for their bootstraps, ready to pull themselves up and be a part of the elite. But of course, none of that's what happened. Reagan's tax plan cut taxes for the extremely wealthy, while his reduction in government spending fixated on slashing social programs, while the military continued to expand. Reagan's dedication to free market capitalism launched 1,000 conservative think tanks whose primary purpose was to, as Jacobin puts it, discredit the post-war consensus of welfare states by appealing to a small but influential group of wealthy global elites. The plan was simple. Cut subsidies for the poor, subsidize the rich. Just call it something else.
Already by the end of the 1980s, working class Americans could feel the gulf created by Reagan's economic policies. Literally, while I was driving here, I was listening to John Gann's book, When the Clock Broke. And he talks about how by the end of the 1980s, the bottom 40% of Americans had seen a negative 4% decrease.
Damn.
Or rather, a 4% decrease in wages. So, like, that's really bad, you guys, like an actual decline for the bottom 40% of people. In addition to Reaganomics, Ronald Reagan's war on drugs further alienated lower class Americans and minorities from promises of success and riches. All the while, Adam Smith's invisible hand seemed only to be jerking off the upper crust of American society. Enter Brian Yuzna's horror film, Society. Released at the end of Reagan's presidency, Society is an allegorical film about how the rich, quite literally, feed on the life energy of the lower classes. The film focuses on Bill, the son of wealthy Beverly Hills parents who never feels at home with his own family, who are all singularly obsessed with him becoming an upstanding member of society.
Ooh.
Only to learn that his parents and the other rich fucks in Beverly Hills are an alien species who engage in flesh orgies to consume those in the lower class. So without further ado, let's dive into Brian Yuzna's Society.
Hell yeah. Well, let's do our initial reactions. First, Hal, was this the first time you've seen this?
No, I've seen this movie several times.
Hell yeah. Well, what'd you think on this viewing?
I like it even more. I'll go into I will expound on this more in a moment after you say yours, but I think this movie is basically a perfect 80s horror film.
Yeah.
From its music to its beats, I think it cast itself a little bit as a slasher in terms of its filmmaking approach at the beginning of
the kind of whodunit, what's going on element.
Well, and even like you occupy a point of view. We see in like the opening scene with Bill stalking through the house during a dream. But then it does something totally wacky and silly. And I love that it just hits you over the head with its theme. Like, it is not trying to be subtle.
Yeah, not at all.
On any level. Nope. The guy whose butt becomes his head says, "I'm a butthead," multiple times.
Hey, Bill, who's a butthead now?
I think it's fun. How about you?
I had never seen it before.
Oh, wow.
I was aware only of its reputation as gross, and I didn't know in what way it was gross. And for 80 minutes, I was like, well, something's supposed to be gross in this, right? And then it is. Yeah, this is like the structure of this movie is like 80 minutes, like build up suspense, that kind of like 80s slasher style, like also little elements of like high school, like comedy, like tropes.
It's very much doing like an offbeat John Hughes, kind of thing.
Yeah. And then the last 20 minutes are just fucking crazy. And it is like, I mean, it is a payoff that I was sitting there like, okay, there's going to be a payoff. And what is it going to be worth it? And then fuck yeah, it is worth it. I mean, as both fans of like body horror and practical like gore effects, holy fucking shit. The last like 20 minutes, I was just pausing and slowing down because I just wanted to see all the weird shit that they had concocted in it.
Yeah, I think one of the things there's a lot of things thematically I enjoy about body horror, but one of them that I think that this movie does really well is the idea that the body is elastic.
Oh, yeah.
It's penetrable. It's not a closed system, and it can be perverted and distorted. And the mass of rich society members feeding off of the poor schmucks just really is the most extreme version of that.
Yeah. So since the like, let's just kind of run down the plot and kind of what we're beating around the bush on the last 20 minutes of that we kind of hinted at already. But essentially, it's this rich Beverly Hills kid who just feels like out of touch with his snobby family and eventually discovers that his parents and sister are a part of this society of wealthy elites who we don't exactly understand what their end game is until at the end we see that this rich elite society meet to engage in these absolutely disgusting flesh orgies. I don't know a better word for it, wherein they quite literally absorb and consume the bodies of like low class scum of their like Beverly Hills, not neighborhood, but like in the area or whatever.
Yeah, folks that they like hunt down, isolate, and then incorporate into these rituals.
Yeah, it is so fucking gross, and I love it. And okay, here, tell me how wild of a thought this was. But one thing that I like that kind of it gave me vibes of Mulholland Drive for a lot of it, like the idea of like there's almost something like artificial about the way it presents like Hollywood, like living in this rich Beverly Hills. Like, I mean, it's not necessarily about Hollywood itself, but they're in Beverly Hills.
They're in Beverly Hills.
And there is like a patina of like artificiality and then maybe just by a function of it like being like kind of what some might call like cheesy
the beach
80s movie.
and they're having parties.
Yeah.
Like I do think
they're leaning into a lot of the like cliche, like rich.
It's very Southern California.
In the same vibes that I get from the early parts of Mulholland Drive, where like he almost is he is shooting it like a soap opera almost, and it kind of to highlight the like artificiality of it.
I think there is a deep uncanniness about this movie.
100%. Yeah.
Where like you said, there's artifice, but it's not necessarily clear that there's anything underneath it. Like there could be a sense of lurkingness, but it's also possible. There's like a plausible deniability that perhaps this place is just this superficial and vain.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like, because he is surrounded by people and representatives of institutions like the therapist who exist to convince him that he's being paranoid and thinking, conspiratorially.
Yeah.
And there's like a level at which you're like, maybe he is. Maybe he's just, this is another 80s guy, disaffected, alienated from his family.
Yeah.
And it's like, nope, they are actually soul-sucking monsters.
Yeah.
Yes, every orifice is being sucked.
Yeah, there is like, it does play with that. Is he just paranoid? But then it does throw in like a couple really good like foreshadowing moments that one creeped me the fuck out. And I think it was almost supposed to be more silly than anything. But it's one where he walks in on his sister in the shower, like in the bathroom with her. And like, it's that like, oh yeah, there's a lot of incest running through this movie as well, which, or
also possibly not. Yeah. Like, again, that initial veneer is potentially is interpreted as incest. But then when it's revealed that he doesn't belong to the family and that all these members of high society are not necessarily like
human
blood
we're
familial.
A different species. Right. But when he walks in on his sister in the shower, it's like she's behind like one of those like the shower glass that like obscures everything.
Yeah, it's like fogged.
But you could clearly see that her top half and her bottom half, like she's just standing there, but her top half and her bottom half are completely turned in different directions. And
so he opens the door and then she's like fine.
Yeah,
and so it seems like he's spying on her. Well, and that's such a great scene for illustrating what I mean of where this is like almost cast as a slasher, because when he enters the room, the music is plodding and has that like almost like it's those heavy beats where it's accelerating towards a moment of reveal, and he's kind of sneaking around in a way that makes him seem like that stalking voyeur of a slasher. And then when the reveal happens, suddenly it's like Porky's or something. Honestly. Right? Like an 80s nasty teen sex romp where it's like, oh, Billy, why get out of here, you nasty. And she kicks him out. Quite masterful, even though it's very silly.
Very silly. And then another really silly but like masterful creepy thing is when there's like, so he has a girlfriend that like they just should be together. They seem to hate each other throughout every scene they're in. But then he meets this girl, Clarissa, of like one of these elite families. And when they eventually hook up and they're laying in bed, and you can see like both of her arms like rubbing all over him, and then one arm
underneath, like wrapping
goes
around
like
him,
impossibly long to wrap around him, and he's like, "What the fuck?" And he like flips her off her, and then and like the sister, she's like normal again. But those couple moments, I was like, "Oh fuck yes!" So whatever's, I didn't know what the reveal was, but those moments, I was like, "I am so fucking ready because this is gonna be something gross." Yeah, I love those. Like,
and again, and then it combines with. There are creepy Barbie dolls being left in his Jeep.
Yeah.
And so again, those are right on the edge of, is it conspiracy or is this 80s teen bully moment?
Right. Yeah,
or like prank.
They have a lot of like great 80s archetypes in there with great 80s names.
Ted the Tycoon Ferguson.
David Blanchard.
Yeah.
Just like a lot of just kind of boring ass 80s names. Also, I could not stop thinking the whole time how much Bill or Billy, the guy that plays him, looked like Jared Leto from My So-Called Life. It was in almost every scene that I was getting hardcore So-Called Life Leto vibes.
The big eyes and the fluffy hair.
Yep, the exact same kind of fluffy hair. But yeah, so we get our first like big hint that shit is sour when Billy's girlfriend's ex-boyfriend, there's a lot of like confusing relationships in this, but essentially comes to him and says, I've recorded your parents and your sister doing something weird.
It's his sister's ex-boyfriend.
Yes, sister's ex-boyfriend. He says, like, you got to hear this. I've recorded your parents and your sister doing something weird. And he listens to the tape, and it's like that part. It is essentially like, you know, they're clipping around what would make it make sense at that point, but he's led to believe that his parents and his sister are in some weird sexual relationship, and he gets completely weirded out, which, yes, that part is great, how weird they are, because there's a scene later where he comes in and he's like, what's going on, guys? And they're like, nothing, but they're all in their
kind of lightly rubbing each other,
like
wearing lingerie.
90s. Yes, they're in like their 90s, like touching each other. Like, what are you talking about, Billy? And that creeps me out.
This is very normal.
Yeah. And then, he gives him the tape. He listens to it. And then David Blanchard mysteriously dies. Or is he the one that in the car accident?
Yes, he dies in the car accident, but that occurs after Billy tries to go and seek support from the therapist.
Yes. Yeah,
and brings the tape to the therapist. But when the tape is played, the audio is different and is very innocuous.
It's from his like sister's birthday party or something like that.
Because she has a debutante coming out.
Yes, yeah.
So the audio is from them preparing for that. Yeah. He's not able to go to it because he's playing in a basketball game, right? Yep. He's having very normal teen experiences. And the therapist is, you know, essentially convincing Billy that he is imagining all of this. Uh-huh. And he says to Billy that people are what they are, Billy, and you have to learn to follow the rules. So we see that the psychologist here is a tool of the bourgeoisie.
Yep. And that, which is like a running theme of that, like of grooming him to kind of become a person worth the society he lives in, basically. Like, so it's revealed that Billy is not their like biological son at the end, and that they are some species, but I do get the sense that they are trying to ingratiate him into this society.
I think they're just cultivating him to be a better snack.
Okay. Hell yeah.
Is how I personally interpret it.
One thing that I also liked is when they're like trying to make sure that when they're like at David's funeral, when he dies, like after he gives him the tape, he mysteriously dies, and they like touch his face in his casket and it crumbles like almost like it's a shell. And that was really gross. And then I like the friend is like just refusing to believe it. He's like, must have had to do a lot of work to get his face to look right or whatever. Like,
so something that my friend Roz pointed out, she's a Jewish woman, is that about this scene is that they make a big deal about showing that it is a temple. But Jewish folks do not have open casket funerals.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, that's an odd choice that I'm not sure. I don't know enough about Brian Yuzna if that's like something related to his background that he wanted to represent, or if they're doing a fucked up thing and trying to be like, it's somehow wrapped up in the power that they're trying to represent, except it's David, who is like a young boy who's going to be subjected to it. It was just once she told me that, I was like, I did not know that. But that makes the scene a little confusing. I don't know how to quite grok that.
My guess is they probably didn't think of that either. And they were like, we need to crumble his face for this scene. So it has to be open casket, I guess. So yeah, we see, then he starts getting involved with this Clarissa girl. And I do want to take a moment to talk about Clarissa's mom, who is the strangest character in this whole thing, who is like a bizarro hair-eating version of Travolta in Hairspray, like just like and doesn't speak except in grunts, and like eats hair, and is kind of like a like Lenny from Of Mice and Men and kind of like ushering him. We learned she is also a part of this society, but maybe being used by them because she's like just a lunk, basically. Like
it just feels kind of like weird science or something.
Yes.
Like there's not a lot of great explanation, but it does lead to some delightful physical comedy.
Yes, it does.
And she also eats people's hair and then spits it out like she's a cat.
Yep.
So I think maybe the intention there is just like she's an alien that hasn't assimilated
I was
in the same way.
When Vincent D'Onofrio puts on that farmer skin in Men in Black. It was like that, but it it didn't fit right. So she's just like, so she's like, she just can't talk.
He horrified me as a child. I will say, I think Clarissa has my favorite line in the whole movie. Where she asks about like, do you want sugar in your tea or should I pee in it? And it's so weird. It's so weird. Funny. Yeah. I love it. I love it so much.
So let's jump into the nitty gritty and talk about the big flesh orgy at the end. So Billy, do they call him Billy or do they call him Bill? I keep saying Billy and then
they say both.
They say both. Okay, cool. So he like shows up. He's going to confront his parents and we're like, all right, let's no more funny business. What's going on here? And then they're at this party with the Richie Riches of society. And who shows up again? But is it David Blanchard, the one that they pull out first? We see that David Blanchard is actually alive and well for the time being until all of the rich people begin removing their clothes and like touching skin with David until David's skin starts to pull away from them and be consumed and merge into them. And then it's just like a 20-minute bacchanal of just like every disgusting angle of grossness, including his confronting his parents, where his mom. What's going on with his mom in that one? She's just like
she's like the top, and then the sister is like the bottom.
Yeah,
and they're both. It's just like their head and their hands.
They're like
are attached to each other, so there's no legs.
Yeah, they look like Sid's toys from Toy Story.
They do.
And then the dad, who he previously called a butthead in a scene, says, "Hey, Billy," and then we see him on all fours, and his face quite literally comes out of his butt where his butthole should be, and he says, "Who's a butthead now?" And maybe the greatest line in any movies ever.
And my absolute favorite practical effect in this movie is then the Judge Jim, who is kind of a reoccurring character as a member of society, comes up and says, comes up to David Blanchard, who is now, fused with 15 different people, and says, "And now we'll get to the bottom of it." And he shoves his hand, assumedly up this poor boy's asshole, and then shoves his hand out of his mouth and eyes and facial orifices. And it is so sick. It is absurd, great. Wet,
gooey, gushy.
Yeah.
I'd also like
filthy.
To point out that mirrors something that happens in a movie I've seen recently, which is Deadpool and Wolverine. And I just want to point it out, the comparison for like, just to, again, like herald how much better like practical gore effects are. Because essentially in Deadpool and Wolverine, the like villain character can do the same thing where like they can like put their hands inside you and like control your brain. And there's a scene where the villain like sticks their hand into Matthew McFadden's like back of his head and it comes out through his eyes and shit. Like the same thing, but it looks like dog shit. And then to see this like just a couple weeks later and see what like this shit should look like, which is
more than 3 decades ago
before, and looks so much cooler and so much grosser and so much like scarier. One thing
I demand ooze.
Ooze. That's what
really extremely blunt commentary on the bourgeoisie as parasites.
Yes. Since we've spent so much talking about high art today, I read a thing. Do you know what Brian Yuzna and the makeup department supposedly were influenced by for the makeup in this?
Oh, what? Tell me.
Thing I read said that the Salvador Dali's The Great Masturbator was like a huge influence on the movie. And you see that a lot when you see it.
That makes sense, especially when the mouths of the Great Society members are attached and stretching out. You get these like long rings and
almost
droopiness, elongated facial features.
And you get the like almost like rolled out dough feature of like of their like skin and bodies and shit. Oh, it's so gross.
Silly. It's like silly putty because it like affixes to and reflects whatever's been imprinted upon it, you know? So we see that ultimately they have all like kind of joined together in this one undulating blob and they're coming after Billy. And then we see like the next layer, again, it's quite shallow, but the next layer of kind of class commentary here, which is that Billy uses his wits to escape them, right? That he has to rely upon his cleverness to get out of it because he does not have the support of anybody else, right? He is fully under the thumb of these folks.
And I just like body horror as a, kind of an allegory for that like alienation from yourself and from your surroundings that comes with like that kind of feeling like a lower class trying to make your like way or trying to live your life with these people that won't accept you, that physically will expel, repel, or consume and destroy you. I think body horror as a genre works well in that like for exploring those themes.
Yeah. The horror of having a body under capitalism.
Oh my God.
One other thing I'll note about kind of this end portion is that so Billy basically challenges Ted to a battle, right? To a duel. And that he is going to defend his own honor and defeat him. And in the like heraldry and announcements that lead up to that, Ted is announced as having lineage dating to, quote, Julius Caesar and Genghis Khan.
Yes, I love that. That was awesome. Well, we all, when it comes, isn't that the thing that people say that like most of the planet is somehow can trace their whatever that bullshit? I don't believe.
And then how does Bill ultimately defeat Ted? But turning the bourgeoisie's weapons against themselves and shoving his hand up Ted's
ass and into his face.
And it reveals worms. So aliens are worms.
I kind of appreciated that.
Is aliens, which is worms.
I kind of appreciated that. It was like, okay, we're going to reach our hand up his ass. We're going to kind of explode him from the inside. There's got to be something in there. Just throw a bunch of fucking gross worms. Like, we've made it this nasty enough. Let's just make his inside just be worms.
It's just got to be gross.
Yeah.
Just got to be gross. And it is.
Well, let's, I feel like we'd be remiss if we didn't discuss some of our other favorite body horror, because I feel like body horror comes up a lot on our podcast. What are your top 3 favorite body horror movies?
So I'll say this. I could have made a list that was like just Cronenberg. Yep. I love Cronenberg. And I think he has like such a unique flavor of it. So a lot of people have said this on Twitter, but I said the day I saw the movie, and I saw the movie the day I came out. So I feel fine in asserting this. Yes. But stop saying that the substance is Cronenbergian. It's not. It's like this motherfucker. It's nasty. It is gross.
Hell yeah. There's kind of like a poetic beauty to Cronenberg's body horror and disgustingness.
And a very like isolating, alienated perspective on it. That the second I saw the substance, I was like, it reminded me of Brian Yuzna, either Society, which he directed directly, right? Or like Reanimator From Beyond, which Stuart Gordon directed, but Brian Yuzna was produced.
And he did a lot of the effects on that, did he?
Yeah.
Or he's involved in it,
yeah.
I think.
Yeah, he was an exec producer. So I didn't list any Cronenberg here, is my point.
I did.
3, I'm going to say Ken Russell's Altered States. I think this is kind of a unique one in that it's not like explicitly a body horror movie. Like, I don't know that everyone would clock it as a body horror movie, but he's undergoing alterations to his body, especially as the movie progresses. And I love it so much. Number 2, I'm going to say Titane. a more
Hell
recent
yes.
addition. But I love seeing playing with gender like more explicitly, you know, seeing a body horror film engage issues of like being transgender specifically. Or not. Maybe it's kind of unclear what's going on with her. Love it. Or them. And then number one, of course, I got to do it to him. I mentioned it earlier. Suspiria, 2018. There are some really
I heard you saw that
disgusting,
twice in theaters.
really disgusting, filthy moments of body horror.
The dance
sequence of the woman isolated, where a ritual is being enacted through her body, being contorted, and she's throwing her body around in a glass room. Everything that happens at the end of the movie, which I will spare folks if you haven't seen it and wish to. Really some delightful body horror happening there. How about you? What are your three?
My number three maybe is a slight cheat. I don't know if we would consider it body horror, but I put Pedro Almodovar's The Skin I Live In. Have you seen it?
Yes.
Yeah. So it is like not as gross, goopy, like your body kind of turning against you, but I do think it still classifies as body horror because it is that like that idea that your body is changing against your will into something that you don't want or whatever. And I don't want to ruin you know, what it's about, but it is
I could see the argument.
Somebody forcibly having their body fundamentally changed against their will.
Yeah, I think like for the purposes of this discussion, I can see why you're saying it. I think the hard thing is that like genre categories exist to meaningfully communicate things. So if someone was like, I really like body horror, what movie should I watch? Like I would not then say The Skin.
That's why I put it at 3,
right?
Because I got.
But I think in terms of like this kind of construction, I can definitely see how it's relevant.
That's why I put it at 3 because my next 2 are firmly in the genre, which would be my number 2 would be John Carpenter's The Thing.
One of the. I was like, am I hitting the right place?
Hell yeah. Hal has a The Thing tattoo that is quite awesome. But yeah, The Thing is just fucking disgusting in all the most awesome ways. And even though it is like an alien movie, there is so much of like human bodies like sprouting, changing, it's just so much grossness.
It is descriptive and accurate, but I wouldn't have thought to use that word. I liked it. It was poetic.
I think. And then my number 1 would be Cronenberg's The Fly, which is the first Cronenberg movie I saw. It was maybe the first body horror movie that I can think of.
Me too, for sure. Yeah, without a doubt.
And there is something so special about that movie, and I think that a lot of what I love is Jeff Goldblum's performance, in that he is never horrified at what happens. He is always like,
the scientist.
Yeah, well, that's interesting, as like his body is crumbling and all that shit. But The Fly is so fucking good. It's also
a beautiful romance. I mean,
it is. It really is.
You know, that's a movie that I would watch with my mom when I was a child quite frequently. I'm a big fan.
My wife might be embarrassed that I'm telling this, but I'm going to do it anyways. But she, as a child, saw not the Cronenberg The Fly, the
Corman?
The Roger Corman one, and like one of her like persistent nightmares was the like at the end when he's all tiny and he goes, help me. yeah, she's like terrified of that.
Listen, I didn't shower alone from the ages of like 5 to 11 because of watching Psycho at age 5. So
hell yeah.
And I did not watch it again until like 2 Halloweens ago, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm serious, like deep trauma.
Yeah, for real.
Trauma. And I love it. It's great. So, you know, here we all are. This has been a big therapy episode. Anyway, what about a last kind of thing we wanted to talk about on this episode? Do you have a favorite disgusting makeup gag? Just like it could be in the realm of body horror or not, but kind of in that theme.
I think the movie is not in the realm of body horror, but this scene definitely is. And it's the one that like always, I watch a lot of gory shit. I got a pretty strong stomach, but this one always kind of makes my stomach flip. And it is the werewolf transformation scene in An American Werewolf in London. And it's the stretching that fucking grosses me out when like he looks at his hand and it's just like, and like you could hear it. And then his feet start stretching and you see his calves like stretch out. It's so,
Chantal and I went to see Megalopolis last Sunday, and before it there was a trailer for The Wolfman, the Christopher Abbott. I forget who is directing it, but there's a new Wolfman movie coming out, and it looks sick. And we both turned to each other and we're like, maybe it'll be something like that.
Hell
So
yeah.
who knows? What comes. I had a few listed. I'll just very quickly, all of The Fly, like the whole everything that happens in The Fly.
Yep.
When his body parts start falling off. Is just so masterful.
The ear?
And again, like delightful. And the fact that, again, I think it's just made even better by the tone of that movie isn't exclusively horror. Like truly the relationship between him and Gina Davis's character is the lasting emotional impression for me. And so the fact that reigns true while horrible, disgusting, filthy things are happening.
And his gross body is never like played for horror. It's always played as like a sadness, almost like a melancholy, it's
tragic. Really
tragic.
Then I'll also say, like, referencing The Thing, Norris's head spider like skittering away when it's like the body, his chest, his thorax, whatever, opens up and is like trying to bite them. Yeah. And then they try and kill his head and his head skitters off like a fucking spider.
That is
and
the exact moment I was thinking when I said sprouting.
Yes. Yeah. That is sick. But then the other two things I'll add, Cronenberg, James Wood's stomach, where he puts the the VHS, into his stomach and then takes out a gun. Brilliant. Yeah. Amazing. There are some really great featurettes on that Criterion copy that show how they did that, which are very cool. And then also, I gotta give a shout out to Hellraiser.
Oh, yeah.
So many things when he gets ripped apart in chains. But that last moment where Frank is just like has been eviscerated, he does the Jesus wept. Yeah. And he's just covered in blood and gore. And looks like a skeleton covered with 15% of the body mass that he should have. It's all been ripped away by chains.
That's a good one. That definitely body horror movie that never gets mentioned in the category, I feel like, but that's a good one.
Damn. All-time great. Unmatched.
Just a body horror episode. Well, other than this episode we just did, but a body horror episode. Oh, God damn, that'd be fun. Hell yeah. Well, do we have anything else that we want to add to Brian Yuzna's Society?
You want to foreshadow our next?
Oh, yeah. So we are in spooky season. It's Halloween time. So we've got 3 spooky episodes coming at you. 1, Society, which you just listened to. Our next one, we're going to watch Wes Craven's The People Under the Stairs.
I'm excited. I've actually never seen it.
Oh, hell yeah. Cool. I think you'll dig it. And then we're going to end by revisiting something we did last year, which is we watched the original Candyman for our Halloween episodes. And this year, we're going to watch the 2021 Nia DaCosta Candyman remake, reboot, sequel,
Redux,
reimagining, whatever we want to call it. I think it's a sequel.
I've also haven't seen that.
I think you'll like that one too.
So there's a little bit of I'd seen Society, obviously, but a little bit of flipperoonie relative to our Italian fascism series.
Hell yeah.
Ready to go?
Well, this was fun. And thanks again to Chantal for being our producer and taking some stress away from me from that I'm fucking everything up all the time. But yes, we'll get you on the next one. Thanks.
Bye-bye.